I'm Caroline Wolf, and I'm talking to you from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We have Kyle Lewis and Ashley Brown from our North Carolina and Texas offices. Ginnie is not able to join us today, but we will try to make it through without her. We also have a celebrity in our midst, Henry Stokes, has joined us. Hi, Henry. I'm glad you were able to be here today. So this shouldn't be a very long call, but I do want to let everybody know just how much the LCT libraries rock, because y'all have just really done a lot of wonderful work this funding year. 82% of the LCT applications that were submitted have been funded through Wave 3, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Wave 4 today or tomorrow. Usually we see them towards the end of the week. The average price per megabit, and just to remind you what a megabit is, the units of measure, just like you have inches that measure length, we have megabits that measure bandwidth. And so your price per megabit for the LCT libraries has dropped from $5.84 per megabit to $4.52 per megabit. So that's been since the program started in 2018. So we're seeing that your prices are dropping. That's probably because you're going out to bid and getting lower prices, and you're getting higher bandwidth because it's gone from an average of about 70 megabits up to 450 megabits. Just about everybody is starting to get on the projected bandwidth targets that the state library has set. So far this year, 654,914.06 has been funded. That's the actual funding share that's been funded to LCT libraries. And that represents 67% of the funded applications for libraries in Texas. So congratulations, y'all. This is a great story for Texas libraries. So for 2019 right now, 408,092.06 has already been dispersed to libraries that filed applications in 2019, and 70% of you have already started invoicing for your discounts. All but 2 of the service providers providing those services have filed their annual certification. The 2 that haven't are 10G Development and Harris Broadband. Now, Harris Broadband provides services to Brownwood, and 10G Development was providing an internal connection service for Killeen, I think. So we'll be getting with y'all to try and talk to you about how you can encourage your service providers to file that annual certification so that you can get reimbursed for those discounts. And for the 30% of you who haven't started invoicing for your discounts for 2019, we'll also be reaching out to you. It's a really good idea, and we're going to talk more about this during the call, but definitely look at your bill and make sure that you, if you expect to be getting your bills discounted, that you really are getting discounts on your bills. Sometimes that's not the case when you think that it is. And then, if you really had planned on getting that discount and you're not getting it, you really need to reach out to your service provider now. It's probably something, if you've been paying already for paying everything in full, then you might consider filing a BEAR. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the next few slides. So, Ashley, is this you or is this Kyle?
I'd be happy to go over this if we'd like to start here. So just be sure to keep an eye out for emails with action item tags in them, because there will be important information that is time sensitive. So it's necessary to read it through and see what you need to address. And if you have any questions about the content of any of those, please feel free to give us a call at our LCT hotline number there, which is 516-801-7820.
Thanks, Kyle. So just remember that once your Form 471 has been funded, you're going to get an email from USAC, and it's going to be automatically, it's going to be sent to you, and it's going to be an automated email, and it's going to tell you that you have been funded. It's called your Funding Commitment Decision Letter, an FCDL. Once you receive your FCDL for 2020, then you'll need to file your Form 486 to let USAC know that your services will be starting on July 1st. If you filed for Category 2 and your services haven't started yet, you might want to reach out to us before you file your 486 just to make sure that's what you want to do. But for your Category 1 services that you want to start July 1st, once your funding has come through, you're going to want to get on that Form 486. Now, for those libraries who have not ever filed for E-rate before, you kind of have a little bit of a dispensation on the SIPA requirements. So if you have never ever received E-rate discounts, and this is your very first year to file for discounts, you have a year to become compliant with the Children's Internet Protection Act. Now, many of you who already are already compliant, even though you haven't been filing for E-rate. But if you aren't sure if you're compliant or not, it's a good idea to contact Henry Stokes. He is the king of SIPA, and he has some great resources on the Texas State Library and Archives website. We have links to those in our links that we provide to you, and I'm sure that Henry has sent them to you as well. So Kyle is going to go briefly over the Children's Internet Protection Act.
Sure. So there's three components to the compliance with the SIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act, and those include the Internet Safety Policy, and that will also need to include a technology protection measure, which you can see at number 2, which is going to effectively include filtering and that will abide by certain standards. And finally, there is going to be a public notice and hearing or meeting that needs to be had prior to the implementation of that protection measure and the Internet Safety Policy. And in the case that you are already SIPA compliant, you may just want to make sure that you have on file the meeting minutes or the meeting agenda on the meeting or hearing that addressed both the technology protection measure and the Internet Safety Policy, just to make sure you have it documented.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, and many of us already have those, have the Internet Safety Policy or an acceptable use policy, and you may even be filtering. But it's important that you do have documentation that you had the hearing. So that's usually a board meeting, and so just make sure that if you don't have the documentation that you had that board meeting to discuss your Internet Safety Policy, then that you do that again and then retain that information. But if you have any questions, do go to the Texas State Library and Archives website. There are some great information about the SIPA, and also if you have specific questions, Henry is a great resource. So there's a question, if you have the minutes from when the City Council approved the revised policy, yes, that will work. That is exactly what you need. You need to make sure to retain the documentation of that hearing. So Kyle, continue on the Form 486.
Oh, actually, Ashley's going to take it
Oh,
from here.
that's right. Okay. Sorry.
I
Ashley.
am. Good afternoon, everybody. As Caroline expressed earlier, the purpose of the Form 486 is to notify USAC and your service provider when services should start or begin, which for Category 1 services would be July 1 of the current funding year. And it also certifies your compliance with the Children's Internet Protection Act. So it's a very important form. So we want to make sure that it gets done correctly. And of course, the deadline to certify your Form 486 is no later than 120 days after your service start date or after your FCDL, whichever is later. So if you're funded early, we want to go ahead and get it submitted now. So here's just a few tips to help you certify the Form 486. You want to make sure that the service start date is the beginning of the funding year. Like I said, July 1 of this year would be 2020. If you're going to be filing your Form 486 prior to July 31st, if you look at the box on your right, you'll see the early filing. You want to make sure to check that box. That's just if we've been funded already, we want to make sure that we check that. Now, there's a box below called the SIPA waiver. Now, please don't check that box unless you're in your first year of filing for E-rate and you haven't had to go through the SIPA compliance process. But I would go ahead and reach out to Henry Stokes just to make sure of your compliance and see if you've done everything. But you really don't want to check that box. It just leads to additional questions to where we need to provide documentation to USAC as to why we're not compliant at this time. So I would just reach out to Henry to make sure you are compliant. Next slide. Thank you. Okay. Some extra tips here are your on your certifications page. And I think this is a little confusing to some. So if you can see here on your certifications, you want to check both boxes. Those just certify that you're eligible to receive services, you're an eligible entity, and that you understand that they're shared services conditional for future use. So you want to check both of those. And then when you get to the SIPA certifications, there's 3 dots you can check. You only want to check the top one, and that one just means that you're SIPA compliant.
Now, if you're not SIPA compliant and you're becoming eligible, it's probably a good idea to talk to one of us or talk to Henry about which box you should check before you certify. Typically, if you're a first-time participant, we'll let you know in the instructions that we're sending you. But if you've been filing for E-rate access, then you really should be SIPA compliant before you file your Form 486 and before you actually can get E-rate discounts if this is not your first year.
Yes. Okay. So the next step in that, in the Form 486, is to hit at the bottom of the screen, you would see the print preview button. So you want to actually review your Form 486 before you certify. Just verify, do a print preview copy, save a PDF, make sure that your certifications are all checked correctly. And then once you're done with that, you can hit the certify button. You'll receive an email from EPC, the application administrator, to confirm that you filed your Form 486. I would save a copy. With that email, you receive an Excel spreadsheet and a PDF document. I would save a copy of both of those for your records. It just shows that they are confirming receipt of your 486 and the FRNs that are included on that. So I would keep a copy of both. Okay. And I think, so the next steps that we want to prepare you for are going to be starting your services for 2020, what to do, and then we're going to go into invoicing USAC for 2019. And Kyle, do you want to go ahead and talk about starting services?
Sure. So with the financial year 2020 coming up, starting July 1st, 2020, there are a handful of things that you will need to address before that. And that includes informing the service provider of the invoice mode that you are going to be choosing. and that is either the billed entity applicant reimbursement, the BEAR, or the service provider invoice billing, and those will be addressed a little bit later in a couple slides. You'll want to make sure that you keep a copy of your bill each month. For BEAR billing, that is something that you will need to file your invoice later in the year. But for SPI billing, you'll just want to make sure that you check your bill to make sure you are receiving your E-rate discount. And if there's any type of installation or construction work required to make the service operational by July 1st, you need to notify the service provider to start on that.
Let me interject something here too. Many service providers, I know AT&T is one of them, will send you an email and ask you to elect which invoice method you wish to use. It's important for you to find that email, especially if it's AT&T or CenturyLink or one of those service providers who sends you an email. They'll ask you to provide the account that you are using for E-rate purposes, and they'll ask you to say, well, if you want a SPI, if you want us to do the discounts on your bill, you need to specify this information for us. If you're doing a BEAR, it's not as much of a big deal about responding to that, because they're going to assume if you don't submit the form that you are doing a BEAR. And so that's why if you do want to do a SPI, it's important for you to respond to that email, or at least to make sure you have a conversation with your salesperson or your rep, depending on the telephone company, just to make sure that they understand that you want that service provider billing. Because if they don't understand, they're not going to do it, and you're going to end up getting a bill for your full amount. So, sorry, Kyle, didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to get on my soapbox about that.
That's a really good point, and more to that point, be sure to check your junk folders occasionally, just to make sure that it didn't get filtered out, along with other emails from both Libraries Connecting Texas and USAC in general. So a couple other things that will need to be addressed if you are starting a new service. Again, you need to contact the service provider and verify that these services are going to start on July 1st. Just to make sure you're on the same page with that. And if you're starting a new service with a brand new service provider, you'll want to contact the new service provider and also the old service provider to make sure that there's no interruption of service in between, with the new service starting on July 1st and canceling the old services, so that there's not a gap and you don't have downtime in between.
You don't want to end up paying for your services that you are supposed to have turned off for months afterwards because the service provider doesn't stop billing you. That's never a good feeling.
True. Ashley?
Okay, we're going to talk about invoicing USAC. And as Kyle mentioned earlier, there's two separate ways to receive your reimbursements from USAC. One is a BEAR, is what we like to call it, or your Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement Form, also known as a Form 472. So not to confuse you, but we have several names for them. But this is where the library pays the service provider in full and later invoices USAC to receive their reimbursement and their discounted amount. And then you have your service provider invoice, or a SPI, and this is where you are only billed your discounted portion and the service provider then collects their reimbursement from USAC. So we want to talk a little bit more about the BEAR form. In order to file a Form 472, this is not done in the normal EPC portal. This is done via the USAC's legacy system. I've provided a link here for you, which if you need that, we would be more than happy to send that to you as well. But in order to do that, you must have a bear pin. So I've also included some information here as to how you obtain a bear pin. This is done, there's a template that must be filled in, which provides all of your information. It needs to be submitted into the Epic portal. So there's two different systems you're going to be working in. But you will go into the Epic portal, you'll create a customer service case and upload a copy of your completed template. And at this point, USAC will email you a PIN or your PIN number to the email address provided in the template. So there's a few steps to do, but we'll, if you need any assistance, don't hesitate to reach out. Also, in order to receive reimbursement, you have to have your Form 498 completed. This is done in the EPC portal. What you will need in order to process a Form 498 is a Dun & Bradstreet number. You can find that number at this link here. Again, all these links can be provided to you by request or via the...
We also have a link on our website for the Dun & Bradstreet numbers. For most of there's some that we don't, some that we have and some that we don't have. So if you don't, if it's not on our link, you'll definitely have to go to the federal link.
Okay. And we can help you with that for sure. And you will also need an FCC registration number. It's an FCCRN, and we'll discuss the difference in an FCCRN and an FRN in just a moment. But once you've filed your Form 498, you will be required to upload a copy of either a voided check or another form of account verification. Once this is completed in the e-file system, you'll upload that at this following link here. And once you've completed all those steps, the Form 498 will go through a review process just to make sure that your account numbers and all of that match and go through, and then you'll receive notification that it's been approved, and you can start filing your bears at that point. So there might be a little confusion as to what an FCCRN and an FRN number are. An FCC registration number is a number that identifies your library to the FCC, and it doesn't usually change unless something happens and you request that it's changed. And then your funding request number, this number identifies your specific request for funding, and it changes with every application.
So that's the end of our presentation. I'd like to open up the floor for questions. I see that there are a couple of people who are on that are fairly new to the E-rate program, and so just wanted to provide an opportunity for everybody to ask a question. So there's a Q&A box that if you want to ask a question, or if you want to raise your hand, we can call on you and answer your questions. I just want to thank all of you for participating in this program. I think it's been a really good thing for Texas libraries. It's great to see such increased participation and seeing everyone evolve in learning more about E-rate and becoming more E-rate literate. I think y'all are going to be experts before you know it. Someone asked earlier about funding, and Laura Garcia asked if this PowerPoint can be mailed to us. So yes, email. We actually can we can email it to you, but we're also recording this, and so we're going to provide the recording on our YouTube channel, and we'll also send the PowerPoint as well, so that you'll have that. And additionally, when we send out information about your funding and about the Bear Forum, we're going to attach all of those links and give you all of that information as well, so that you'll have it. We tend to give a lot of information, and it's one of the reasons why we like to have this call every month, is because we don't want you to get overwhelmed, because E-rate program, as you see, there's a lot of stuff. This is a really good time for everyone to sort of listen to each other's questions and, you know, just and benefit from everyone's questions. So what I was going to say earlier was that someone was asking about the funding. You know, it's not a usual thing that 82% of the applications, and I don't know about nationwide, but 82% of the LCT applications have been funded. Normally, we don't see that in May, but if you haven't been funded yet, that doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means they're still reviewing your application. They may have questions that they're going to ask you. They'll send an email to you and ask the questions. We're also monitoring that and will facilitate your response to them. Just you know, make sure that when you get the email, if you'll forward it to us, it'll be a double, sort of a double reminder for us. But we are monitoring the TIA questions as well. So if we don't have any other questions, I guess we will let you all get back to your day. You know, another little question: are y'all having challenges because of the COVID pandemic closures? Are there any questions about E-rate and the pandemic? There's a bunch there's a lot of legislation that's going on, and I don't know if y'all are all aware of that. Henry, can you talk about that at all? About the IMLS funding?
Yeah, so specifically, we get some funding that, and so folks who aren't aware of it, you can apply for CARES funding through the Texas State Library in order to actually help pay for efforts, not only with for broadband, but also for digital inclusion efforts. So you can start ordering equipment, computers, hotspots, and things like that. SIPA compliance is required for that, and since it is LSTA funds. However, one thing I've discovered is in this case, you do not get the 1 year of undertaking action. So if you haven't done SIPA, then you'll have to do that quickly in order to be able, and you don't have to be SIPA compliant until you actually start receiving the devices from the grant funding. So it's not like you have to, even when you sign the form right now, you don't technically have to be fully SIPA compliant. But yeah, please contact me if you want more information about all that. But we're definitely, a lot of funding has come our way through IMLS, and we'd like to get it out to those who need it.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks, Henry, a lot. Okay, well, I'll let everybody have their day back. I just wanted to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions if you have them. So have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.